everyone. Greetings. Happy Thursday. Welcome to the Steve Deace Show. Decided to bust out the old Christmas sweater. After all, we've got measurable snow on the ground here. Kind of looks like a wintry Christmas card on the drive-in, so feeling a little festive. Who knows? Maybe I'll fire up some Christmas music on the ride home.
And you know what? This first snow may cancel, or this last snow, I should say, may cancel my daughter's first soccer game, so that's got to make you even more happy.
Indeed. You know what? If I knew that, of course you're not going to play in the snow. It's a soft sport. So if that's the case, then may it just snow all the way into May, as far as I'm concerned. And America will be better for it, right? Your daughter's too talented to lower herself to that sport. See, you teed this up. That rant was all your fault.
I give.
All right. My name is Steve Deace. His name is Todd Erzen. His name is Aaron McIntyre. You have a name too. Maybe someday we will learn it if you email us, steve@stevedeace.com. That's DEACE. You can also like us on Facebook, MeWe, Parler, and Gab. You can follow me at Steve Deace Show on Twitter and Getter. And the last name is DEACE. Oh, and you can get clips of the show that are free to watch and also free of censorship at rumble.com/Steve Deace Show. This is totally my bad. I forgot to mention this yesterday, but because today's Thursday. So it was Tuesday, Aaron, that I appeared with our colleague Jason Whitlock, correct? Yep. Mm-hmm. And he had me on his show to discuss the Will Smith matter. And he certainly brought a perspective to it that I had not previously considered, because no one had previously shared that perspective with me. I don't think that it altered what I think from my own perspective at all, but it certainly provided a different vantage point than I had seen before, that there might be another debate happening here besides the one that I largely witnessed, which was there's just never a time for a man to ever behave that way. There's nothing that could ever be said to disrespect your wife or anybody under your charge that you love that you would ever need to actually step to somebody else, which I just wholeheartedly, with every molecule of my body, reject. Okay? But there may be another angle here, too, worthy of considering, that I thought Jason did an excellent and eloquent job articulating. So if you want to, if you haven't watched that episode of Fearless yet, I believe it was Tuesday night's episode, and the two of us went back and forth on that. I know that you were here watching as we were recording that live.
What were
your thoughts?
No, it was a great conversation because, well, this is one of the great things about the Blaze is we can have open, honest debate and disagreements, and neither of you had your feelings hurt. You're just two dudes kind of talking this out, and he made some valid points, which I know, I would say challenged you and made you think through it a little bit more. Weren't necessarily swayed all the way in the end, but it's the kind of content and the kind of dialogue that you get here, and it was fascinating to listen to.
So I want to thank Jason for having me back. I know you guys ask me all the time, why don't we have him on? His taping window is when we are live. And so it just so happened that they were willing to hold over finishing taping their show a half an hour late in order to accommodate me. So, but we're live when he tapes. Otherwise, we'd love to have him on the regular. I mean, I'm a big fan. When we were contemplating bringing him here, I was a huge advocate behind the scenes, lobbying for it. We had him on our show a couple times before he even came to work here. I've always been a fan, even in the sports arena. I've always found him to be a critical thinker. I like critical thinkers, even if I don't always agree. And it just so happens that over the last few years, he and I are agreeing more these days. But I mean, I've been reading his stuff for years before him and I even knew each other. So wanted to thank Jason Whitlock for having me on his show Fearless on Tuesday. And if you want to hear that exchange or watch it again, that was Tuesday's show. So go and get it. All right. Coming up on today's program, we will continue our now weekly escapade into self-harm, known as this Theology Thursday series on the Scott Atlas book, man. And it's just bitter, okay? But we have to persevere here. We have to get to the end because there are important lessons. Even Todd now. See, I need you because Dude, I was going to tap out like 3 weeks ago. If we're just all being brutally honest here. I know the sign over here says, over my shoulder says, truth be told. Like 3 weeks ago, I was fully prepared to come in here and say, guys, I think I've had enough. and I rely on you. All right. I rely on you to keep us on the narrow road. All right. To make the vinegar flow. Okay. To keep it salty so the salt doesn't lose its flavor. I rely on you for that, Erzin. Okay? You cannot lose your edge, Todd, because I already lost mine, all right, where this book is concerned. I've lost it, all right? I mean, I'm literally cutting myself in the commercial break before we do another chapter of it. You cannot lose your serrated edge. You can't do it.
I'll do my best, but I can't unsee page 175 yesterday. I'm surrounded by a group of parents at something I had to take my kids to. None of them know what I'm reading or what the... I wanted to yell out, are you people reading this? Page 175.
Sir, this is a Wendy's.
Yeah,
yes,
exactly.
Yes. We're going to do another chapter next hour of the show. And then 3 non-political questions after that. At the bottom of this hour, more and more, you folks have been sharing with me the work being done over on the website, the National Pulse. So I've checked it out over the last couple of weeks, and they certainly were ahead of the curve on what we are now getting from corporate media on the Hunter Biden story. And one of their chief investigators over there, it's Natalie Winters, correct?
Correct.
And she will be joining us here at the bottom of the hour. So we are looking forward to that conversation. But before we get to all of those zany hijinks, we begin, as we always do, with Aaron's rundown of what happened while we were away. It's becoming increasingly obvious that one of the key ways to change the direction of the country is changing the way the marketplace works. Right now, we've got woke corporations seeking to divide us, big banks freezing the accounts of people who disagree with their views, and a supply chain dependent upon countries actively working against our values. Is that a problem? Is that bad?
But what answer do you expect from me from that question on any topic at this point?
The answer to is that bad is pretty much a default yes nowadays. Yes. It's time for a change. You know, that change can start with us and our wallets. That's why we want to partner with Public SQ, for Public Square. It's the largest directory of freedom-loving businesses that we've ever seen. It's the first app to connect freedom-loving Americans with their local community and the businesses that share those values. So if you want to support a restaurant that does farm to table with local farms, a coffee shop that took a stand against COVID and mask mandates, or a bank that would never cancel you for your views, Public SQ is your guide. Just download the app from the Apple Store and the Google Play Store, create a free account, and you can begin your search. You can also list your business for free so that your local community can find you today. Download the app now. It sounds like a phenomenal idea. Public SQ for Public Square. Public SQ, download the app today. Well, I've been following her work here in recent days as now the corporate media has decided all of a sudden it wants to tell us some truth about Hunter Biden and his dealings with certain foreign elements. In the overtime today, we're going to discuss why. Why now do they want to get into this? We'll do that later today at blazetv.com/Deace. But let's talk with someone who's been on the cutting edge of digging into this story for a lot longer than corporate media has been. Natalie Winters is here with us from the National Pulse. Natalie, welcome here to our program for the first time. It's a pleasure to have you.
Thank you so much for having me.
First of all, since it is your first time, tell us a little bit about you and the work that you do with the National Pulse.
Sure. Well, I would say, kind of thesis of how the world works is that there is a ruling class of Americans epitomized by the likes of Joe Biden, Hunter Biden, Nancy Pelosi, and even on the other side of the aisle too, Mitt Romney, who run this country in a way that doesn't benefit really anyone except for themselves. And what we try to do at the National Pulse is expose where exactly these conflicts of interests lie. It's easy to use slogans like compromised by the Chinese Communist Party, fake news, foreign influence operations, but we really like to get into that, kind of footnote some of those slogans, those talking points, and really show you where the conflicts of interest lie with America's ruling class, particularly with the Chinese Communist Party, I am very interested in China. That's kind of my main beat. So of course, Hunter Biden, when we got our hands on his hard drive, it was like Christmas for me because there was so much to do with the Chinese Communist Party, and that story in and of itself kind of confirmed our worldview.
So the stuff that is coming out now in the corporate press, you were covering this almost 2 years ago. So what's in there? Who's Hunter Biden? We've heard he does crack. He's got a child that the Biden family doesn't recognize. And I got to be honest, I've worked in politics for so long, Natalie. I'm extremely skeptical of even the people I tend to agree with. Okay, and then the people I don't agree with, there's not even a word beyond skepticism that goes to just how shady I happen to think this entire business is. All right, so what's the real story? Who is this guy? Because someone's hard drive on their laptop would probably reveal quite a bit about their character, right?
Sure. Well, you know it's bad when the crack addiction, the multiple children and affairs with your brother's dead or your dead brother's wife are kind of the sideshow to the sideshow.
Mm.
Because that's frankly what I found when we were going through the hard drive. I think the major lead and really the interesting tell on that hard drive is the foreign business dealings that he was conducting, not just with the Chinese Communist Party, although I think that's probably the most interesting. And of course, given that China is the #1 existential threat, not climate change, as the left likes to say, faced by the United States, the fact that he is so bought and paid for by elites in Beijing really is the most consequential. And I would say a clear national security threat. But of course, Ukraine, even Mexico, even smaller countries that don't, maybe because they're not as attention grabbing in headlines, but they're all on there. So what we found, frankly, I think there's a deeper metaphorical significance to the Hunter Biden hard drive than just the juicy emails and the juicy audio recordings and the pictures. And I think it really is a testament to how American elites, specifically kind of the offspring, I would say, the equivalent of the Chinese Communist Party's princelings. We have our equivalent over here, epitomized by Hunter Biden. But just how I think they don't love America. And I think when you don't love America, when your allegiance to America can so easily be taken away just with a offer of a wire transfer for $1 million, which we saw on the hard drive from a bunch of these Chinese entities and Chinese companies, I think that really speaks to the bigger problem here, which is, and you see in the policies that the Biden regime, as we like to call it at the National Pulse, is implementing. Their America last, certainly not America first. But when you really get into the details and you look at the documents, you see that Hunter Biden was giving wiring instructions and a host of contracts and just different documents that do corroborate that he was indeed paid millions of dollars by certain Chinese Communist Party companies. One of the primary entities, the one that the Washington Post covered yesterday, was CEFC China Energy. And this is a group that's part of what's known as China's United Front Work Department. So this is a multi-billion-dollar effort that's carried out by government officials in China, including that has some military ties. But it really, I would say, is probably the best modern day example of political warfare. It's the idea that the Chinese Communist Party uses business deals, contracts, just certain points of leverage against individuals that they see as having influence in American society. So it's not just people like Hunter Biden. You also see mainstream media talking heads, academics, think tankers be targeted by these influence operations. But I think Hunter Biden was of particular interest to them. And we uncovered, again, almost 2 years ago, an audio file on the hard drive that showed that Hunter Biden actually admitted that he was, quote, in business with the effing spy chief of China, a reference to Patrick Ho, who was leading CEFC China Energy. So it's as bad, I think, as the narrative goes, as the talking points go in terms of how deep and connected he is to the Chinese Communist Party. And of course, it took 2 years for the mainstream media to do it, although they certainly have ulterior motives in doing so now.
Incredible. So let me ask you some point blank questions to kind of boil this down for our audience. Okay.
Sure.
Does the laptop unquestionably demonstrate that Hunter Biden was attempting to profit off of his father's political notoriety and connections for his own personal benefit with foreign countries?
Yes. So beyond the fact that, why would energy companies and even companies that have, biological laboratories in Ukraine be wanting to work with Hunter Biden
They
beyond
don't
the fact
frequently
that his
hire
last
crack
name
addicts.
is right? I
Yeah.
know. Beyond the fact that his last name is Biden, there is, incontrovertible evidence on the hard drive that suggests this. One of the stories we put up actually shows that emails from Yang Jianming, who was another chairman, he's now been indicted, or he's missing and probably killed by the Chinese Communist Party. Seems to be a similar fate for a lot of business partners of the Bidens and the Clintons. But interestingly enough, when he was emailing with Hunter Biden, he would always ask for meetings with quote H and the family. So not just Hunter, he would try to get meetings with other family members. I would say ostensibly Joe Biden. If you read the rest of the conversation, again, these emails are up at the National Pulse, you can see what he's likely alluding to. And even more interesting, this is again off the China aspect of it, but there was actually a Mexican businessman. I forget his name, but again, the emails are up at the National Pulse. But you can see a rather, I would say, kind of heated email exchange between the two of them, where this businessman is pressing Hunter, asking him to effectively do more for the consulting contracts that he wanted, whatever business deals he wanted to get. And you can see Hunter replying to him in an effort to kind of ease his anger. And he says, "I got you every meeting you wanted at the White House." So you can see that he was really leveraging his connections to the White House. There's also have been people who used to work at Hunter Biden's consulting firm, Rosemont Seneca Partners, actually end up getting hired by the White House. So there's some sort of revolving door aspect there. But the big smoking gun is, of course, 10% for the big guy. And if you look at the National Pulse, and other outlets have done great coverage on it too, but you can see this kind of term big guy, this kind of shady third party person who seems to be benefiting from the deals. We've seen no indication that it's anyone otherwise. And frankly, we've also seen no really refutation from the Biden camp that it's not Joe Biden, which I think that is probably the biggest tell.
You've already answered this, but let me just ask it point blank anyway. He's not, celebrity son here. He's brought in to be, the connection to the vice president and now president. He is actively coordinating these things. You see the difference, the distinction I'm trying to draw, that his hands are all over this. He's not just a passive trust fund kid who a shady network of operatives got him involved deeper than he thought. He's the mastermind here.
Well, I think that is a difficult question to answer from the hard drive, right? I would have loved to have been a fly in the room, on the wall in the rooms, and see how these deals went down, because there is some level, it seems to be, of control. So one of his business partners, his name is Eric Schwerin. Since we've started reporting on him, he's deleted his Twitter account, deleted basically all of his social media profiles. But I'm sure he's innocent, even though he's doing that. But it's really interesting because there are a lot of emails between the two of them where it suggests that Eric Schwerin was sort of in control of Hunter Biden's finances, in the sense that Hunter Biden would ask him to wire more money from his account that he could use. So to some extent, there is, I would say, a level of oddity in terms of their relationship. And again, you have to remember, all these people kind of met back in college, right?
Mm-hmm.
The original entity that they formed was Rosemont Capital. Of course, John Kerry's stepson is also involved in this. You also have Devin Archer, who's the Yale roommate. So I think that there's two stories. I think Hunter Biden was certainly complicit, and I think he knew what was going on. But on the other hand, I do think you had a lot of people who realized, oh my goodness, the then vice president's son is a crack addict whom we can exploit, have him do literally anything so long as we give him money and, frankly, crack. That's what the text messages and the emails suggest. So I think that they exploited him too. They realized the opportunity that they had. I would say an opportunity that's probably never before existed in the history of the American Republic, where the vice president's son was effectively just kind of an empty vessel waiting to be exploited. But on the other hand, I do think it goes back to what I was saying in the beginning, which is that the American elite, their allegiance to the United States is not very strong to begin with.
Mm-hmm.
I think, it's a lot easier to sell out, quote unquote, sell out to the Chinese Communist Party. Not if you're just a Democrat, but if you're a member of this elite who's only ever seen benefit and, increased profits and your bank accounts balloon when policies like outsourcing and offshoring American manufacturing are kind of the MO of your party.
Natalie, I've got about 90 seconds here. I don't want you to spoil any of your work, but just as someone who's been on this beat for now going on 2 years ahead of everybody else, where does this story go next?
Well, I think the Ukrainian biolabs shows you that there is almost always some level of Hunter Biden relevance.
So you think you have evidence there's a direct linkage between Hunter Biden and those Ukrainian biolabs?
Certainly.
Okay.
And honestly, we don't even need the hard drive to prove it. You can prove that from publicly available documents.
I'm sorry, the Ukrainian biolabs that don't exist. I'm sorry. Yes. Yeah.
Exactly.
Yes.
The Ukrainian biolabs that the fact checkers tell you certainly don't exist, which is almost a telltale sign that they do. But no, and I think that the point is, even though this is so obvious, it's so wide out in the open, really ask yourself why they are not just doubling down, but tripling down on covering up that biolab story. And don't let the mainstream media do a misdirection play of having you think this is all about Hunter Biden and the business deals that he pursued, because Joe Biden was intimately involved too.
Natalie, very impressive work. I mean, you're impressive. We will have you back. All right, appreciate it. Thank you very
so
much
for having me.
You bet. Gentlemen, if you are struggling with premature, isn't hair loss always premature? Like there's never a time you're like, I think now's a good time for me to lose my hair. It's always premature.
I was wondering where that sentence was going.
Premature evacuation of your hair. Or you want to do something about that male pattern baldness, but you want to do it on the down low. Our friends at Keeps can help you with that. They give you all the same great products that are out there, FDA approved, but the generic versions, in order for you to get some savings there. But then also there's discretion. Everything is done online with a licensed physician, and then it's delivered directly to your door. And then they give you even more savings to get you started. Half off your first order to get you going here at keeps.com/grow. Their name is Keeps because they play for keeps when it comes to saving your hair. KEEPS is how you spell it. Keeps.com/grow. Again, head over to keeps.com/grow. Thoughts on the conversation we just had with Natalie Winters. Aaron, it looks like you're ready to go.
Yeah, I think it's all but a guarantee. And I'm not really breaking any new ground on this. It's all but a guarantee that with other friends, close friends, family members of basically virtually any other president or high-ranking official, this stuff goes on all the time. It just so happens Hunter Biden is a crack addict who lost 2 laptops. And that's why it's made so plain and out there for us. This type of wheeling and dealing. And I loved how Natalie set the stage about the ruling class. This type of wheeling and dealing is everywhere. And it has been going on for a long time. So, it's not that surprising. But if it takes this to finally illustrate to people just how corrupt and just how immoral your ruling class is, the people who believe they have the right to rule over you, then I'm glad, and I'm fine with that. I just want somebody to be held accountable.
I love how unapologetic it is, and she laced it through at multiple points. One of the bottom lines about it's really important to understand how un-American these people are.
Great point.
They're all prodigal children. They just want what they want. They're born with a silver spoon in their mouth, whether they actually have riches or not, just a sense of entitlement that because they were born here, they get to poach this place for all it's worth and apologize for nothing, defend nothing, stand for anything of value. It's pathetic.
Well said. That'll do it for hour 1. We'll come back here with hour 2 in a moment, live and on demand on Blaze TV, as we continue our series on self-harm. Next. All right, we're back with hour 2, live and on demand here on Blaze TV, radio, and podcast. Steve Deace here with Todders and Aaron McIntyre. All of you, let us know what you think about what we think. You can do so by emailing the show, steve@stevedeace.com. That's DEACE. Like us on Facebook. Also, MeWe, Parler, and Gab. You can follow me on Twitter at Steve Deace Show, and also over on Getter at Steve Deace Show as well. And then you can get yourself some clips of the show free of censorship, free to watch when you go to rumble.com/Steve Deace Show. Again, that's rumble.com/Steve Deace Show. Also want to thank all of you that are podcast listeners with your continued support here on the show. You're a big part of our show's ongoing growth. Please leave us, if you haven't done so already, a 5-star review that you love the program, and then also hit the subscribe, or I think on iTunes now it's the follow button. And thank you to each and every one of you, the thousands of you that have done that for us as well. I'm told that helps our show to grow. I have absolutely no idea how that works. I do know, though, that it satiates our increasingly fragile male ego, so we appreciate it from that perspective, if nothing else. Theology Thursday brought to you by the upcoming Inspire for Health, or Inspire 22 conference that you can register for right now at inspireforhealth.com. That's inspireforhealth.com. That's coming up this weekend. It's a free conference featuring the likes of Olympian Cindy McLaughlin, Dr. Ryan Cole, who you guys know from being a frequent guest on our show. Yours truly will take part in a panel conversation as well. What does it mean, particularly now in this era that we have learned, unfortunately, that we cannot just completely outsource our own health anymore to the healthcare system? What does it mean to take more responsibility for that and to understand more of what preventative health really means? If you want to take part in this online event, the conference, it is free on Saturday. You can watch the replay on Sunday for free if that's more convenient for you when you go to inspireforhealth.com. Again, that's inspireforhealth.com. Well, we continue our Theology Thursday series. Reminder, this year we're doing a series of book studies to kind of study the spirit of the age in its natural habitat, if you will, to kind of do a little recon on the enemy before we confront him or it. And the first book we're looking at is A Plague Upon Our House, My Fight at the Trump White House to Stop COVID from Destroying America. I will tell you, this book is destroying my innards. This book is crushing me. It had me contemplating jumping out of the plane when I read it through the first time, going through it now a second time in the conversation phase. I mean, I am at this point, I'm thinking of taking a COVID jab just to end it. Okay. I mean, this is, it's a tough read. And if it's tough on us, I wonder if the audience is just like, no mas, man. But we must continue. We must learn. Because one thing that Scott Atlas's experience in the Trump White House at the end is teaching us is exactly what not to do on any level whatsoever against the spirit of the age. So, Todd, we should start with you, and particularly your room 222, if you get the Shining reference, page 175. Okay. There's a room 227, I can never remember. But what was it that had you indiscriminately screaming out yesterday, "Are you reading this?" to a group of people who had no idea what you were reading? What happened? Let's start there. What happened on page 175? The chapter, by the way, I always forget to mention this, and you guys get on me about that, and you're right. Chapter 9, Debating the Science About Schools. So page 175, what made you spontaneously combust reading this yesterday?
Well, as I read it, I'm having the internal dialogue with myself. And then I read the next lines, and Scott Atlas says the exact same thing that I was having the internal dialogue about. Burke's they're dealing with a hospitalization number that is not actually increasing. It's actually steady at this moment. But she insists, more testing, more testing, more testing. We can't possibly solve this problem without more testing. And in my head, I'm thinking, this is my kid learns fractions. I think in like 4th grade is when it's like all you're doing is you're not addressing a real problem. You just want to change the denominator on something so you have a different statistic. And I'm thinking this in my head.
They're going for a narrative.
And I read the next sentence, and Scott Atlas is saying the same thing. And he's looking around the room, and I'm hearing this. All she wants to do is change the denominator. You're not affecting or impacting anything on a health level, and you might just be terrible at math. The problem was not getting worse. She just wanted to test more to cook the books. That's it. I don't know if she understood. Because,
I don't think she did.
See, that's the other depressing. And then you realize, is she just, because the more chapters I read, there clearly is a demented part of her. And I remember back in the day when she first got on the scene, talk about being wrong about people. I remember sitting here in this chair saying, like, you know, she might be a help when she started on. Oh my goodness. She definitely is malevolent in that there's a narrative and we're sticking to it, and I'm not having any of this from any of you people sort of thing. But she also seems painfully stupid. And I hate to, you know, I know
she does. How many bad female stereotypes of that that you could chauvinistically concoct about putting women in positions of leadership does Debbie Burks
all of them
fulfill during the course of this book?
box.
And the answer is all of them. All of them.
And in terms of our book, Fauci and Bargain.
Can I add one more thing to that?
Yeah.
How about when she comes at Scott Atlas with Worldometer?
Yeah.
And this is the stuff laymen like me have to go to online. She is the chief scientist of the White House Coronavirus Task Force, and she's discussing, she's utilizing the most banal of data information sources out there to make her claims. This is what we have to do in the cheap seats. She had no better data available to her within the White House than Our World in Data or Worldometer. That's where we were going during all of this. What does that tell you?
Well, listen, we have as you said earlier on the show about A Different Matter, we have a pretty low bar for what we expect from people on any front. But yeah, she's managing to bottom out our expectations. And in terms of our book, the one thing we couldn't necessarily see is all of the interaction on the inside, and to know how easy she made it for Anthony Fauci to just go do his shows and get anything he wanted by just kind of being the whisper in her ear. Yeah, just keep doing it. You're doing great, and making her, because she's the one that's front and center far more than him in the book so far. She's the one that's going out state to state, barnstorming for this thing. And again, if you're president of the United States and you say you want something different, but you continue to let her do this all the time, that's a you problem, Donald Trump. You could have said, yeah, you're on timeout permanently. You never did that. But it seems sloppy and lazy. And I'm coming back full circle to about the dumb thing. She's a credentialed woman who's worked in this for a very, very long time. But I chapter after chapter after chapter, she just seems like a very, very dim bulb.
So, and I wasn't kidding when I said
the credentials actually lend credence to that nowadays.
I wasn't kidding when I said this last hour. So I've read her stuff before. I've never heard her talk. I've not met her. I've not seen her interviewed. This was my first in-person exposure with Natalie Winters, the young woman from the National Pulse we talked to at the end of the last hour, right? All right. So just looking at it from the perspective of dads of daughters, how freaking impressive was she?
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
I mean, in her presentation, in her confidence, all right? And she understands that it's a visual medium, but at the same token, she packed a wallop of substance there, right?
Yeah.
I mean, that was a pretty potent portrait of young femininity that she brought,
absolutely.
professional young femininity that young woman brought to our show last segment, right? She's about 40 years younger than Debbie Burks. How much more impressive in that 10, 12 minutes was Natalie Winters compared to how the lead scientist of the White House coronavirus task force comes across in this entire nearly 300-page book.
But that lends to another frustrating thing. Scott Atlas continuing. He keeps resetting this, and it's very slapstick, and it's hilarious that he keeps doing it. He keeps setting the scene where she does something like this, like you're talking about, that's so unimpressive and so dangerous, quite frankly, if we keep believing what she's peddling. And he's looking around the room, and he keeps waiting. No one takes her on. How is she holding court during a pandemic in the highest office in the land? They're having these meetings in the White House, and there's no pushback. They just nod, pat each other on the back. Mike Pence, again, just nodding and saying, well, again, boy, I forgot that. Maybe because I just had to forget it. Mike Pence, after page 175, where he is...
So we'll increase the testing,
Yeah, I guess we just increased the testing. And Scott Atlas did step in and said, you realize what's happening. He said it out loud in the meeting, that you're just changing a fraction. You're not helping a problem at all. You're not making anybody healthier with this. You just have a different chart. And Pence said yes. We wrote a book with a level of skepticism in a very dangerous time that could have got, people even on our side didn't want to talk about it. We risk dangers all the time of getting canceled. And Scott Atlas's book is making clear that we weren't even skeptical enough.
Yeah. You want to be more depressed?
Sure. Let's pour it all out.
I've had several people I know within the Trump White House who were telling me all this time that this was going on in real time, that Debbie Burke says MAGA.
No,
She's
I know.
one of
No,
us.
you've told me that. Yeah.
I know. I just thought now it needed to be said again. Several people within the Trump White House told me this at the time. Because you guys know, man, by this time, I'm now trying to poke around, I was very hesitant because it was still kind of sensitive. I didn't want to support him during the 2016 election. I got several friends that ended up going to work for him in the White House, and I don't want to make it any tougher on them. So it's kind of a don't ask, don't tell policy. So, where friends are concerned. But by the time we got into the summer of that year, I'm now beginning to say, okay, we have got to get some answers here. I'm starting to ask some questions. I'm starting to poke around a little bit. And I got told that by multiple people I knew in that White House. That Debbie Burke says MAGA. She's one of us.
But are all these people the same ones that Scott has mentioned at the end of this chapter and many other chapters so far, where after he finally steps up and says something, they come up to him privately? I'm so glad you said something. It's about time somebody said, why aren't you saying something? You work in the White House.
Yes. So you have a thought on this, Aaron?
I do.
Go ahead. All right, the floor is yours.
This is Theology Thursday. Why is the devil called the father of lies? The answer is really complicated because he is. When you think about environments, Bill and I have this feeling we've got a little mold problem in the place we're renting right now. It's really frustrating. What environments does mold thrive in? Moist environments where there's not a whole lot of air moving. You might blow a puff of air in there every now and then, but that doesn't do anything. Once mold starts to grow and accumulate, you have to clean it out. You have to excise it. Otherwise, it'll just keep growing and growing and growing, no matter what you do. And sometimes that can be painful and damaging. You talk about environments where lies thrive. This is one of them. Because at the end of the day, they're working, as Dr. Atlas noted, they're working entirely off of circular logic at best. That's the type of environment where lies just grow and grow and grow like mold. And a singular, I would like to interject something here from somebody like Dr. Atlas. As great as that is, and it should be praised, doesn't really do anything if he's looking around the room and nobody has the cojones to have his back in that moment. Instead, it's a half an hour after the meeting. Wow, boy, I'm so sorry. Boy, that was really weird. Man, I'm glad you said something. Here's the logic. Here's the logic that we've been sold over and over again over the last 2 years. There's a problem. There's a problem. Data comes out that the problem isn't quite as bad as we think it is. Well, there's not conclusive data. Data comes out that's conclusive. Problem isn't as bad as we thought it was. Great, we're going to do more testing. Do more testing. Oh, there's more problems. It's not quite as bad as it. That's the game.
Mm-hmm.
I really don't think, and to further Todd's point, I really don't think that she was doing this malevolently. I just think that she is dumb. I really do. Talking about Debbie Burks. After reading all of this, I cannot imagine that she honestly thought she was helping a situation there. Because when you're sitting in the bean counter seat in Washington, everything is just a number. Everything's just a ratio. It's human nature. Doesn't excuse it, but it is human nature. And so that environment where they're working off of this circular logic, and you can apply this to anything. You can apply it to masks. There's a problem. The problem isn't quite as bad as we thought it was. Oh, there's not conclusive data. Here's some conclusive data. All right, we'll test some more. All right, we'll mask some more. All right, we'll vax some more. If the problem goes down, great. It would have, mask, vax, testing worked. Goes up. Think of how bad it would have been if we hadn't done those things. That's the environment in there. And it was only really going to be stopped if somebody like Donald Trump or Mike Pence would have just busted it all up. Because one guy, one puff of air trying to excise and trying to halt the spread of that mold inside the White House coronavirus task force every now and again clearly was not enough.
Speaking of Theology Thursday, in the context of everything you just said, remember the thing in the popular imagination that made Donald Trump the force of nature, that people anointed on the right to do something, to drain the swamp. What was it? He would confront situations like this. Where did they learn about him? And what 2 words did he make famous? Guys, anybody know what I'm thinking?
Fired.
You're fired.
Mm-hmm.
That's why. They wanted that Donald Trump. It wasn't, people knew he New York mogul, all that stuff. The popular consciousness right there. No BS. He's going to take care of it. And this flood of circular nonsense that keeps coming at him, he never said it. He never said it. So in terms of Theology Thursday, what we learned, the really frustrating thing about Donald Trump on levels, despite that he's clearly better than Joe Biden, which is not much of a standard. But biblically speaking, let your yes mean yes and your no mean no. And if it can't exist anywhere in this environment, when it would seem like we are at we need to make 11th hour decisions one way or the other. Steve, I've always found it interesting that you said, in terms of especially raising a son, if you make a decision, even if it's the wrong decision, and you can elaborate that on you want to, but none of this wishy-washy crap. Donald Trump was not the "you're fired" guy. He was incredibly wishy-washy, and his yes at the most crucial time did not mean yes, and his no did not mean no.
Those are both great points that you guys just made. I'm going to do my best to try to bring it home here in a second. Right after, though, I think now's a really good time to remind everybody about the Z-Stack. While they're out there still lying about things like ivermectin and early treatments, make sure you take advantage of the daily formula from Dr. Vladimir Zelenko, all the vitamin C, D, quercetin, zinc that we've been telling you about here for the last couple of years on this show. He's combined it all into one compound that is kosher, American-made, and now it can be a part of your daily preventative health regimen. Be ready for the next variant they're about to unleash, or will just organically happen in the natural world or something. And you can also get a small discount when you go for the first, your very first order. They'll give you the discount for your first order when you go to zstacklife.com/Deace and use my last name Deace as your promo code to get that discount on your first order. If you need a refill, you can go there as well. zstacklife.com/Deace. So one of the things that we have to be wary of is there's a difference between being insulated and being isolated, right? And so the biblical distinction here is to be in the world. So you're not isolated, right?
Right.
But you're not of it. So you're not insulated. Mm-hmm. We have to, we're here to engage this world.
Yeah, Matthew 28.
Yeah, it's why we're here. We're here to engage it. We're here to offensively engage it. We are here to offend it. All right, we have a message that is foolishness and offensive to the world. So we're here to offend it, but also offensively impact it for good. And we're here to offend it for good. So we have to be in it, but we can't be of it. So there's a biblical example of the distinction between being isolated and insulated. What I see here in this book is a White House culture that is largely isolated itself. It is not insulated in that I'm Winston Churchill. I don't care what my advisors say. I don't care that you guys are preemptively cutting side deals with the Nazis behind my back. I'm the prime minister of this country, and as long as I am, I'm fulfilling the will of the people of this United Kingdom till the end. If you don't want me to do that, then get rid of me. But that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to defend us against all enemies, foreign and domestic, with my last dying breath. That's Ron DeSantis saying earlier this week, I don't care what the biggest corporation in the state of Florida, Disney, thinks. I don't care what woke corporatists anywhere from here to California think. I'm going to represent the interest of the people of Florida, period. That's my job. That's what I'm going to do. That's the insulation. But the problem can become, and I've seen this happens a lot with Republicans in elected office. How many times I've seen this at a state house where you become so surrounded by the spirit of the age that now you're isolated. And now it's about maintaining the culture. Hey, we're all huddled. We're a huddled mass. We're huddled together. Let's hold on to let's stick together, maintain cohesion. And there's some value in that, right? Okay. But then maintaining that cohesiveness amongst yourselves is placed at a higher level than what's real and what's the truth. So Winston Churchill can say all he wants. Hey, I'm going to the end. We're taking this to the finish line. But he can't ignore battle plans. The same prime minister who said that is the same prime minister who organized the greatest strategic retreat in Western military history, Dunkirk. See what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. So he never lost sight of what the ultimate mission was, but he didn't so isolate himself that he just ignored the reality on the ground at the exact same time. Had he done that, World War II would have ended on that beach there at Dunkirk that day. The Nazis would have eradicated what was left of the Allied forces, and that would have been it. Before we even got into the war, that was the spring of 1940. So, I mean, he could have just said, hey, we're going to do this no matter what. I already gave this fiery speech. We're not backing down. And then just let what was left of the Allied army just get slaughtered out there up against the English Channel by the Nazi marauders. He could have done that, right? Mm-hmm. But that's the difference from being isolated to being insulated. Insulated is a courage of conviction. not a denial of reality. Isolation is. Isolation is when you deny reality, and then it becomes more about maintaining the inner culture of those that you're isolated with. You see that in this book a lot. Don't rock the boat. How many times has Scott Atlas told that? Don't rock the boat. Mike Pence just go along with whatever Debbie Burke says so you don't have to deal with her outbursts. And she's MAGA, unlike that Fauci guy who we have on our 6 TV screens stabbing us in the back all the time, right? Where's the truth at in these conversations? Usually it's Scott Atlas interjecting it, getting patronized, and then it's nowhere to be found afterwards, pretty much, right? Yeah. And it reverts back to the isolation. This is why I've said in the past, we as a movement cannot squash our contrarians. And I say this somewhat sensitively because I'm one of your contrarians. All right? But if you can't argue your own contrarians, see what a real leader would have done at some point in this book, a real leader, and that's up to the guy in the West Wing and the president in the West Wing, the vice president who's overseeing this task force, and who is really the de facto chief of staff, Jared Kushner, the son-in-law, who's the second most powerful man in the White House next to the president himself. So I'm really speaking to those three. At some point, one of those three needed to step forward and say, hey, you know what? Enough. No more BS. We couldn't possibly go out there and argue against the people that disagree with us if we can't even answer the contrarian within us as questions and challenges. See what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So someone beat Scott Atlas in an argument, otherwise we're going to do what he says. No one ever does this. No one ever does this. This show and a few others were total contrarians to what you were hearing everywhere else, even in conservative media, for how many months? Credit to the management here at the Blaze. I would try to bring them along and show them my arguments from the very early days of this and why I was thinking this way. But they weren't red-pilled from the very beginning, folks. They just knew I was doing my homework, so they were willing to, hey, let's see where this goes. Now, if anything, our CEO, Tyler's more radicalized than I am on this topic. But we can't crush our contrarians. You can't do that.
This, by the way, is why our book was not on many
That's
more
exactly
shows.
right. They didn't want to have to admit that they had engaged in that.
Nope.
Because your wife's a doctor, or because you know Scott Gottlieb, or whatever because there's no possible way Trump would shut down his glorious economy. So they must know what they're talking about, and they must know what they're doing, right? These are all the things that we heard while this was all going on.
Yes.
For how many months, right? But if you cannot answer your own contrarians within your own ecosystem, you have no chance to defeat the enemy. None. And no one ever stepped forward. The three men in the most powerful of leadership roles never stepped forward and just called the question. What did I do last hour on this ivermectin thing? I called the question. Bring it. And I'll quit if you win. No one ever did that. And one of the reasons why is because, frankly, all right, I'll say it. Frankly, there's a lot of people wearing our uniform that are just as afraid of being accountable to objective truth as the people we're trying to defeat. And I'll just leave it there. 3 non-political questions are next. All right, back here on the Steve Deace Show, as inflation surpasses highs not seen in a generation, the value of the dollar decreasing with every passing day, you're paying more at the pump, the grocery store, for cars, for housing. Again, we ask, is that bad? Yes, very bad. Face it, paper money getting increasingly worthless. Now you got Putin basically stepping to the U.S. As the default currency by telling his global partners, beginning tomorrow, if you want any more of our oil, you have to pay us in our native currency, not yours. Folks, the timing couldn't be better for our new sponsor, Bullion Max. They are a direct-to-consumer precious metals retailer who can help you diversify into gold and silver as a hedge against inflation, also security for your family. during times of crisis. And here's why you're going to love Bullion Max. They're owned by veterans in the precious metal space that offer some of the lowest prices on the internet. For example, right now, if you want to get started at Bullion Max, their silver starter kit, they're offering it to you at employee pricing. You can't get it any cheaper than that. Employee pricing for their silver starter kit when you just go to bullionmax.com/Steve. bullionmax.com/Steve. It's a kit with 5 of the most desirable silver products out there to invest in right now. Offer, though, is limited to just 1 per household when you go to bullionmax.com/Steve. It's now time for 3 non-political questions.
Have questions.
Who am I? Why am I here? Where am I going? Who am I? A search and a question of identity. Why am I here? A question of meaning and purpose. Where am I going? Question of destiny.
Some better than others.
What sort of morality or proto-morality would you expect to find in a chimpanzee troop?
Injecting some levity into the demise of Western civilization. It's 3 questions on the Steve Deace Show.
Who am I and what have I done with Aaron? It's 2 straight weeks where it's not the day of, not the segment before, not the minute of. 2 straight weeks where I've actually thought of questions well ahead of time. I had all 3 of my questions ready to go actually before the sun came up this morning. That's weird. Question number 1, though. It's a bit political in the setup, but it is non-political.
Okay.
Listen very carefully. I'll lay out the question here. I'll give my answer first so you and Todd have some more time to think.
You made fake up numbers and letters again, didn't you?
Z3, no. Steve, you've often said some version of the following. Not everybody who voted for Joe Biden is a communist, but all communists voted for Joe Biden. Correct? You've said some version of that.
Yes.
Yeah, close, yeah.
What's something non-political that syllogism applies to? Not everybody who did X is Y, but everybody who is Y did X. So for mine, does that make sense to you?
Yeah. So but go ahead, give me an example.
So there are inexperienced drivers, there are defensive drivers, there are aggressive drivers. I'm probably an aggressive driver, and then there are douchey drivers. Okay. You all know the type, the ones that just try to cut you off just because it's fun sport, not because there's actually any legitimate need, okay? Sometimes there is legit need to cut somebody off. Sometimes there is legit need. I get that. But some who are just douchey for douchey's sake. We've all seen drivers like that. This is a little bit sensitive for me, but not everyone who drives a German-made car is a douchey driver. But all douchey drivers drive German-made cars. It's a little bit sensitive. My father-in-law drives a German-made car. It doesn't apply to him, but that's what I've noticed. Not everybody who drives a German-made car is a douchey driver, but all douchey drivers drive German-made cars. That's mine.
Okay. I've got an easy one for you. Not everybody who loves soccer is a communist, but all communists love soccer. Something like that?
That's a great one.
Okay.
Hey, are you proud of me, by the way? Last night, I made a pretty penny betting against the U.S. men's national team.
I am. In
Plus
fact, that might be the most patriotic thing you've ever said on the show.
Plus 425 Costa Rica money line at halftime.
That might be the most patriotic thing you've ever said on the show. Maybe anyone's ever said. God bless you.
Thanks.
And God bless America.
Well, I absolutely appreciate the spite in that soccer thing. So try this one on for size.
Okay.
Not all Colin Kaepernicks welcome
I knew this was coming. Yeah.
But all Jim Harbaughs welcome Colin Kaepernicks.
Yeah, I knew you were going to go there. Right when I dropped it on soccer, I knew you were going there. I'm feeling you.
You're welcome, America.
Yeah, well done.
Question number 2, what's the most hated team in every major sports league? And I'm just defining that as NFL, MLB, NBA, college football, and college basketball.
Well, college basketball, pardon me, it's Duke. Yeah. Or, you know, who knows if that will continue into the, pardon me, John Shire era next year. But it's Duke for sure with college basketball. Agree with that?
And just
Agreed.
This is current, like as of this day.
Yes.
There we go. I think I got it that time. College football. I think there's Alabama fatigue.
I don't know if anybody
But
really
I don't
hates
get
them.
I don't feel like there is like national disdain for them, like you would get with a lot of dynasties. Is that fair?
Yeah.
I just think people are just sick of seeing Alabama, but it's more of a, man, I'm sick of that guy beating me all the time. I don't feel as if it's, Duke level of disdain. So in college football.
You know who's coming up the rear real fast?
Who?
Michigan.
Well, I was about to say we are. And some of it is we do get overrated in the media a lot because of how big our fan base is. And so we get overrated in terms of how we're talked about. The other thing, though, is that our head coach is just instant clickbait no matter what the subject matter is. So, and this last season was the first time in how many years that we actually overachieved for a change, So I think Michigan's probably pretty close to that.
I think the most loved,
maybe Notre Dame.
Notre Dame is the most loved and the most hated simultaneously.
Okay. The NFL, it has to be the Dallas Cowboys, doesn't it?
Currently?
Yeah.
Oh, I don't think
think it is currently.
No.
I don't feel. Let me think through who it would.
I think the Chiefs. I think because of Mahomes.
I think the Patriots.
Mahomes.
I could see that.
Mahomes likes to flaunt, and he has a really annoying brother.
That's not current though. It was with Brady, but now they're just.
I don't see a lot of people that just hate the Chiefs. I just don't.
No, I don't.
Oh, man.
Okay.
You haven't been a Chiefs fan.
All right. I'll take your word for it then. I would probably vote for the Cowboys just because of the amount of attention and everything they get. You're talking about a team that I think has one playoff win since 1995. And they're still America's team and all the exposure and everything else they get. But
I would say either the Chiefs or the Packers because of what Aaron Rodgers pulled with.
Yeah, I think it's also difficult to have a singularly hated team in the NFL that's so predicated on
10 years
parity.
Ago, yeah, 10 years ago, this would have been easy.
But I'll vote Cowboys in the NFL.
Who's the most hated player in the NFL right now? Maybe that's
Aaron Rodgers by about half the country.
Yep.
Well, then maybe it is the Packers.
Major League Baseball, it's the Yankees for sure.
Yeah, it's the Yankees for sure in baseball. Yeah, I agree.
NBA, the Lakers probably right now.
Yes.
LeBron has become increasingly dislikable, and they're not any good, So, yeah, I'll say the Lakers would be that team in the NBA. Good question. Before we get to the third one. Bigger trouble could be coming, so make sure you're prepared with our friends at preparewithdace.com. That's My Patriot Supply. Right now, you can get food that stays fresh for up to 25 years with their 3-month emergency food kit at My Patriot Supply, the nation's largest emergency preparedness company. They specialize in long-term food storage, 3 square meals a day, snacks, even drinks. That's over 2,000 calories a day for you. And everyone in your household right now, you can get that deal and save $150 and get free shipping when you get it from preparewithdace.com. Again, that's preparewithdace.com. $150 off and free shipping at preparewithdace.com.
All right, final question. Question number 3. What's the saddest song you've ever heard? It's a 2-part question. What's the happiest sounding song you've ever heard?
Saddest song I ever heard. When Anna was little, that song Butterfly Kisses, I just couldn't handle it. I had to stop. I don't think I've heard the song in like 17 or 18 years. I just couldn't handle it, man. Okay. So every time that song would come on, I'd be driving home from work or something, and that song would come on, and it would just friggin' break me. So that would be the saddest song I think I would say that I've ever heard. Happiest song. There's a lot of songs that do that, but I'll throw in something that's an obscure 80s one-hit wonder that still, when you hear it, you just can't help but feel like there's a little pep in your step, man. And that's Walking on Sunshine by Katrina and the Waves.
Sure.
I mean, it doesn't matter. I mean, that song is what now? 35 probably years old, and maybe even more. I think it came out maybe around 85, 86. Just doesn't matter what time of year it is or what mood or anything you're in. The minute you hear it, it just kind of, I mean, you got a bounce in your step. Now I could get really nerdy on you. I mean, for me, the happiest song I've ever heard is John Williams' Superman score.
There you go.
Okay. I think I've said this before. When Noah was little and we used to play the Lego theme games together, when we do the open world version, we could split the screen in half and we were each our own characters. I would just be Superman and then just fly around the whole time and not play the game, because when you fly Superman around, the Superman thing kicks in. So I could just hear that over and over again. So those are a couple things that come to mind for me.
What's that Counting Crows song at the end of the first Shrek movie? Like, definitely.
Oh yeah.
Love.
Accidentally in Love. That was
Accidentally in
what
Love.
Bella and I walked out to.
My Tessa, daughter number 2, when that was out, she was in, little like toddler 1 to 2 year old phase, strapped in, and she was kind of my quiet shy one. When that thing came on, her head would just like start beating back and forth just because it was such a happy song. So that is absolutely in my mind. Sad song. They did a great skit, I think, on SNL about an Adele song like 4 or 5 years ago that was just about like breakup, that was just so painfully sad. But there's a lot of fantastic, hard to believe, this song that can make you genuinely hurt. You find the beauty in it. So
that's a good answer, Todd. I'm cutting aside classical music for this one. I would say the saddest song, at least right now, basically anything by Radiohead, but Radiohead, No Surprises. I mean, it's like, okay, well, I'm just going to go walk off a cliff now after listening to that. It's a very, very depressing song. It's pretty, but it's depressing. Probably the happiest sounding song that I've ever heard is Happy by Pharrell Williams. It's a very repetitive song that got played into the ground a few years ago when it came out, but it is a very happy sounding song.
I got a much sadder song. It's depressing, but it's a showstopper, and it's what he closes all his concerts. Piano Man.
Oh, yeah.
Piano Man is not a happy song. It is about lonely people.
Yeah. I saw. Are we done?
Yes, I mean,
your show.
Something clarifying on the previous question, but if you have something
No,
to
go
add.
ahead. No, you go ahead.
Red Sox or Yankees more hated?
Oh, it's the Yankees.
That's what I thought.
Yeah.
Somebody said on Twitter, Red Sox are more hated, but I think it's pretty easy. It's the Yankees.
I mean, I there's been recent controversies with them, and they've been the better team recently.
Mm-hmm.
So I get if you're a little younger than us, then I can see, like maybe why our sons or your grandsons might have more of a disdain for the Red Sox, but I think you've got to be at least Gen Z to have more disdain for the Red Sox than the Yankees. I think every previous generation, it's, hatred, jealousy, and everything else of the Yankees for sure. So I went and saw, since you brought up Billy Joel and his last song, I saw Elton John in concert here in Des Moines last weekend. It was a belated Valentine's gift. I mean, the place was freaking packed, no empty seats. And this was not an inexpensive ticket. I'll just put it that way. But so I was concerned about two things. One, I thought that the show might end up being like extremely Rainbow Jihad and then just nauseate me, even though I'm a huge fan of the musical catalog. I mean, the first song I ever as a child remember knowing all the words to was Elton John's Your Song. The first album as a child I can ever remember knowing all the words to every song on the album, and even like the order of the songs on the album itself, was Elton John's Greatest Hits, the Volume 1, where he's wearing the white hat and the trademark big glasses on the cover there. And so I happily, it was not a show of Rainbow Jihad propaganda. About the closest we got is when they when he did the Bitches Back, the accompanying video, because I think Joan Collins probably wouldn't want to appear in the video herself. In fact, I think she passed away, if I remember right. But so they had like a drag queen version of her fighting with other drag queens. That was really the only colors of the rainbow that we got during the show. The other I was afraid of is, I mean, the day before the concert was a 75th birthday. So I was concerned, where's his voice? I was so scarred. It's been about 10 years now. I've not watched a Super Bowl halftime show ever since when Daltrey and Townsend came out as the Who duo to do this halftime show, and Daltrey just, I mean, it was sad to watch, man. Okay.
It's fascinating to watch some of those guys. I'll let you finish it. It's fascinating to watch. You can tell which ones were professionally trained early in their careers and earlier in their childhoods, and which ones just kind of belted out.
So I mean, I'd read that Elton like spent the COVID shutdowns making sure he was healthy and able to do this tour to give people their money worth. Dude brought it, man. At 75 years old, can't hit all the high notes, but everything else, it was robust. I mean, it was full. He ain't moving around very well. You know, he was kind of waddling around the stage, but he was very, very gracious. A lot of the backup band were people that he kind of reunited with that were on like his first world tours in the early 70s that came together for like a 50th year reunion. This is kind of his goodbye tour. He did a great job. It was a lot of fun. Opening number was Benny and the Jets. The closing number of the main program was Saturday Night's All Right for Fighting, which they did a phenomenal job with. And then they came back with an encore, and the last song for the encore was Goodbye Yellow Brick Road, and then he literally floated off the stage away, said goodbye.
He's as good as I've ever seen him. I've seen him twice by himself and twice with Billy Joel, just always pure rock and roll.
All right, well, we're going to call some pure BS in the overtime here. We're going to stick around and record that for you at BlazeTV.com/Deace. That's where you can watch it later today and subscribe right now if you want. Until tomorrow, we're back again, noon to 2 Eastern, right after Glenn Beck, John 3:17.